chances are you know, or at least have heard of, someone who's had dealings with an elf. The modern names Alfred and Alvin come from Old English names meaning elf advice and elf friend. One famous fictional Alfred gave generally good advice, while one fictional Alvin was pretty friendly. One was tall and one was short, and while I bet their creators didn't have ancient elvish myths in mind, those differences nicely encapsulate the varying views of elves throughout history. Like many mythological beings, elves have gone through a number of transformations through the centuries, and the reasons we view them the way we do today is the result of a combination of factors, some of which I'll try to address in this video. Just keep in mind that, like the home of Legolas, the true answers can often be a little murky. Elves from Tolkien's works, or Dungeons and Dragons, are tall, but elves like those from Harry Potter or Santa's Workshop are short. So, which is it? As I mentioned in a previous video, elves and dwarves are once considered offshoots of the same race. In Norse poetry, elves are more closely associated with the lofty gods, while dwarves stayed closer to the ground, or sometimes underneath it. This probably influenced later writers to depict dwarves as short and stunted and rough-looking, while elves were tall, noble, and regal, and in Tolkien's case actually rubbed elbows with divine beings. If you're looking for a single reason why elves became tall, that's probably it. In late medieval times, though, the word elf fell out of favor, and was often replaced by, or used alongside, fairy, which, as now, generally represented a short being with magical talents. In the 1590s, Edmund Spenser wrote The Fairy Queen, and William Shakespeare wrote A Midsummer Night's Dream, both of which featured fairies/elves. Spenser's were human-sized, while Shakespeare used both the tall and small varieties. Where you do see short elves, they tend to be mirthful and mischievous like many other short fantasy races, using magic or natural stealth skills to remain unseen, even though people were sure they existed. Tall elves tend to be more serious and wise, and are typically the standard now in fantasy, thanks to the Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons. As Gary Gygax put it, "For me, elves have to be tall, graceful, skilled in arms, long-lived, and usually good. Short grubby guys with beards are not elves." Like many mythological beings, elves' heights have varied with the storyteller and his or her specific needs, whether that be to depict a graceful and stoic warrior, or cute little guys who make toys or cookies. Probably the best known physical feature of elves is their pointed ears, but it may surprise you to learn that J.R.R. Tolkien never called out this feature in any of his works. That's right, there's no description of elves in The Lord of the Rings or its related works that explicitly describe elves as having pointed ears, and as we know, Tolkien loved to describe things. He did sometimes compare the physical appearances of elves and men, referencing the two races' heights, builds, and agility, but curiously never their ears. Now, in one of his letters, Tolkien does make a reference to hobbits having ears only slightly pointed and elvish. That confirms that hobbits have pointed ears, and most people would take this as proof that elves do too. But the construction of the sentence leaves things a little vague. Imagine if I referred to cars that are red and stylish. If all elvish ears are pointed, would that mean all stylish cars are red? Another unpublished manuscript from Tolkien refers to elven ears being more pointed and leaf-shaped than human. Does more pointed mean the sharp points we're used to seeing on elves, or something just less than perfectly rounded? Nowadays, we all have an idea of what elvish ears look like, but when Tolkien wrote those things in 1938, there wouldn't have been that same consensus. Here are a few postcards from the 1880s, a decade before Tolkien was born. The descriptions label the creatures as elves, dwarves, pixies, or imps, but they all fit the general description of elves as small fantasy beings that would have been popular at the time. Some have rounded ears like humans, while others have longer, though not exactly pointed ears you'd associate with an elf. Now, I'm not looking to be the final arbiter of whether Tolkien's elves definitively have pointed ears, and the way they're depicted today has been firmly established and crystallized into popular consciousness, but it seems like there is room for debate around the issue. And it should be noted that even humans can have varying levels of pointiness or roundness to their ears. Maybe it's the same with elves. As was the case with height, Tolkien probably had his impression of how elves should look, and if he or an illustrator settled on pointed ears, that was as valid a choice as any. Because of the vast reach and influence of The Lord of the Rings, that's how we view them today. A fantasy elf's most notable combat talent is his or her skill in archery. It's a defining characteristic of the race, and unlike the other topics we've covered, this one is easier to find evidence for. Elves today are often depicted as good creatures, and it's in this way that they differ markedly from elves of the past. In medieval times, they were considered to be mischievous and troublesome, and sometimes in league with the devil. Incidentally, that might explain why especially human-sized elves are often depicted as eternally young and beautiful, the better to tempt a good Christian into sinful acts. One of the ways in which elves caused mischief was via their elf shot, arrows they would fire at humans. The elves themselves were invisible, so you never knew when one was attacking you, but after a long journey, travelers might find an arrowhead buried in the soles of their boots or entangled in loose clothing, proof that one had been attacked by an elf. Unlike most stories regarding elves, this one is actually true, to a degree. People did sometimes find stone arrowheads in unexpected places, but they didn't come from elves. Rather, they were artifacts left behind by Neolithic peoples, and in the time before the theory of evolution took hold and everyone believed that the first humans were Adam and Eve, it was reasoned that the arrows had come from supernatural beings. There was little knowledge in those days about diseases and their causes, so elf shot was often blamed for ailments that affected both humans and animals, even if no actual arrowhead was found. If it wasn't an elf causing such misery with elf shot, it was a witch. In 1662, one accused Scottish witch, Isabel Gowdy, claimed that the devil, with the help of elf boys, crafted elf arrowheads that he passed on to witches, who fired them at their targets by flicking them with their thumbs. In another trial from 1590, a noblewoman named Catherine Ross was accused of using elf arrowheads to metaphorically shoot her rivals and, through magical means, cause them to suffer. You are accused of making two figures from clay. The one made for the destruction and wasting away of young Laird of Fowlis, and the other for the young Lady Balnagown. These two figures being placed on the north side of the chamber, the aforementioned Loskie Longcart took two elf arrowheads and handed one to you, Catherine, and the other the aforementioned Christiane Royce Malcolmson held in her own hand, and you shot two shotties with the said arrowhead at the aforementioned Lady Balnagown, and Loskie Longcart shot three shotties at the aforementioned young Laird of Fowlis. Whether inflicted by an elf or human, shot in all these cases might refer to a kind of curse that invisibly injured someone. Think of a shooting pain, rather than literally piercing someone's flesh with a weapon. But whether through direct or indirect means, the notion that elves were skilled with the bow and arrow likely came from the notion of elf shot, and has stuck with us to the current day. Thank you so much for watching this video about some of the common myths surrounding elves. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll give it a like, and subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about the true history of fantasy. Until next time, may you and your cattle never be struck down by elf shot. Or if you are, let it at least be by someone as attractive as Orlando Bloom or Evangeline Lilly.